everybody. Good evening. It is Monday, April 10th, 2023. First day of the Lori Vallow Daybell trial, not including jury selection. What a day it was. We're coming on a minute early because there's so much to get to tonight. I do want to warn you, it's going to be a longer Courtroom Insider tonight just because there's so much to go through. Just moments ago, I got the audio from today's hearing, and I want to play you the opening statements. Lindsay Blake, the prosecutor, spoke about 30 minutes. Jim Archibald spoke about 15-20 minutes. This was the very first thing the jury heard today after being sworn in, after being given instructions. Lindsay Blake took to, I won't say she took to the podium, she got a remote mic and she went and stood right in front of those 16 jurors. And she talked about how this was about sex, money, and power. And that Lori Vallow, in Lindsay Blake's words, did anything to get those three. And if Tylee got in the way, she was gone. And if JJ got in the way, she was gone. And if he was gone. And if Tammy got in the way, she was gone. She showed the autopsy photo of Tammy Daybell and left it on the screen for probably, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. She showed a picture of JJ wrapped in plastic and duct tape. And then at his head area, it was cut and you could kind of peer inside. She showed the image of what remains of Tylee. And when I say remains, you couldn't tell what it was. She spoke about Lori casting people, determining who was light and dark. And she spoke about Lori's alleged crimes. And I'm going to play it for you here in just a few minutes. So stay tuned for that. That wasn't the only thing today at the trial. Kay Woodcock took the stand. She was the very first witness. She stood up there. She talked about JJ. She talked about his adoption and how Lori and Charles adopted them because Lori was the perfect mother. She loved Lori. Lori and her got along great. Brandon Boudreaux took the stand. You remember, he's the one that was married to Lori's niece, Melanie, and he's the one who was shot at in Arizona. And for the first time, we heard him give details of that morning when he came home from the gym, turned the corner onto his street, his brand new house, because him and his wife had just separated. No one knew he lived there except the neighbors and his wife and a few other people. And suddenly he sees a gun pointed at him out of a Jeep. And he sees the gun go off. He sees the silencer and it shatters his window. And he keeps driving. And that Jeep had Texas plates. He spoke today. He got very emotional at many points during the trial. And as did Kay. When they showed a picture of JJ that I'm going to show you in just a minute, she got very emotional. The jurors took notes. Some took very detailed notes. They were there. They were in tune, and let's get right to what we have today. So day one, here's our trial. We have opening statements. We have Kay testifying. We have Brandon testifying. Tonight we're going to remember JJ, Tylee, Tammy, and Charles. And then we are going to take your questions. So please let me know wherever you're watching from. I want to know if you have any questions, and I want to know anything that you want to ask. I'll try to get to. We have Peggy helping me out today. She's giving me some insight on the questions. I want to set the stage, though, for who the characters we're talking about. This is the prosecution's team. On the left here, right below me, I guess you could say, I'll move me over there. We have Lindsay Blake. She is the Fremont County prosecutor. She is the one who gave opening statements today on behalf of the state. You have Rachel Smith. She's the attorney in the middle. She's from St. Louis and Missouri. She is trained and has done work with death penalty cases in the past, a lot of them. And she was brought in to help with this case. And you have Rob Wood, who is on the screen right. He is the Madison County prosecutor. He did the questioning of Kay today. So Lindsay did openings, Rob questioned Kay, and then Rachel questioned Brandon. Here are the defense attorneys. Jim Archibald is on the left and John Thomas is on the right. When they left court today, I actually spoke with them, as did some other reporters. Justin Lum was there. We asked them a couple questions. Jim actually answered. That's on my YouTube, on my Facebook page, if you want to go and watch it from earlier today. He said it was a big win for them to have death penalty taken off the table. And I did ask, jokingly, a lot of you were saying, why did you ask about Winco? Well, at this courthouse, there's not a lot of places to eat lunch. And these lunch breaks are fairly short. And so we've seen the defense attorneys walk across the street and go to Winco every day for lunch, and there's like a little deli counter or pizza or whatever. And so they've been going there, and today the media followed them there and back, other media. And so they told us that they will not be going there tomorrow because they could not go to their lunch. And then Justin asked, what is Lori having for lunch? And Jim said, I don't know, maybe a bologna sandwich in the basement of the courthouse, something like that. You can watch that encounter if you'd like to. Now, this is the court. This is the judge, Judge Boyce. I'm showing you these because he has not allowed cameras in the courtroom. And I can't tell you how many times this morning that I said, I wish there were cameras here so that you all watching could see this testimony, so that you could see the statement, so that you could see Lori, who maintained a pretty stoic demeanor throughout the whole thing. When I say stoic, I don't mean angry. She just didn't show much emotion. She was talking with her attorneys. She was taking notes. Larry Woodcock said that 8 times they met eyes before the opening break. And I looked over at one point and watched Kay stare at Lori, and she was fixed on Lori for probably 3 minutes. She did not break her stance. There's Judge Boyce. This is the way the courtroom is set up. I hope this makes sense. This is my quick drawing. I'm not the graphic designer at East Idaho News, but here's who we have. So let's say you walk into the gallery. You see that yellow box? That's the gallery. You walk in those back doors. That's where we sat. We sat in the yellow. Those orange dots are each of the jurors. There are 16 of them. So 8 and 8 on each row. 12 will be the main jurors, 6 will be the alternates, and they'll know who's who when it comes time for deliberations. But right now, they are hearing all the argument. There's 10 men and 10 women. The witness stand is right there next to the judge's bench. So you can see Archibald, this is how they were sitting today, Archibald, Daybell, and Thomas at that one table directly across from the jurors. So Lori is able to look directly at them. And then the prosecution, Smith, Blake, and Wood, face the judge. I did not include here, there is a lectern right next to the prosecution between their desk and the jurors' desks that they stand at to question people. And that is where Jim Archibald stood at to give his opening statements. Lindsay Blake did not. She actually took a portable mic, as I said, and she kind of walked in front of the jury. So that is the setup for the courtroom, and where, as I said, we all sat in the gallery, in the yellow gallery. It was full, and man, it was those benches are wooden, and it's a long time to sit. It's a long time to sit when you and you can't leave. You can't leave the courtroom. If you leave, you're gone for the day. There was a break in the morning and a break in the afternoon, but that's what it was. All right, so I want to jump to the opening arguments. Now, I think that I want to play the whole thing for you, and at least Lindsay Blake's whole thing, and then we can get to Jim Archibald perhaps. Again, it's about 20 to 30 minutes. I'm not going to come on and give my opinion or anything. I just want you to hear what the jurors heard. I wish I could show you what they saw as I play this. We are in the process. I'm in the process. Right before I came on here, we got the audio clip. I broke out Kay's testimony. I'm breaking out Brandon's testimony, and I'm going to post the whole thing. So if you haven't subscribed to the East Idaho News YouTube channel, go there, and if you hit the bell when you subscribe, you'll get a notification when those videos are posted, and you can listen to them all. And I'll have those done tonight. I'll have everything up tonight. You can go and listen to everything today. Total, it's about 4.5 hours because they take out breaks, they take out sidebars. Lunch was about an hour. So it's about 4.5 hours of audio, and that's what we have. Okay, I'm going to jump over here to the opening statements. Again, Lindsay Blake talking to the jurors. As you listen, if you have questions, put them in the comments because we'll get to them as soon as we can.
So at this point then, this will be the time for the opening statements. Ms. Blake, I understand that you will be making opening statements on behalf of the state. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Blake, then you can commence with your opening statement.
Thank you. Money, power, and sex. That's what this case is about. The defendant, Lori Vallow Daybell, used money, power, and sex, or the promise of those things, to get what she wanted. What she wanted was money, power, and sex. It didn't matter what obstacles she had to remove to get what she wanted. It didn't matter if the obstacle was a thing or a person. And if it was a person, it didn't matter who. Tylee Ryan was a vibrant young woman, 17 years old, a whole life ahead of her. She was just about to enter into adulthood and make her own way in the world. Who knows what she would have become. Tylee had already lost her father, and she received Social Security benefits because of that. Tylee had money. Lori wanted it. Tylee's gone. Joshua Jackson Vallow, lovingly known by friends and family as JJ, was a 7-year-old, vibrant, happy-go-lucky little boy. He had most of his childhood and his whole life ahead of him. But JJ was tough. He's a 7-year-old. He took a lot of time and effort and energy to care for. That time, effort, and energy took away from the defendant doing what she wanted to do, and from the defendant being with Chad Daybell and devoting her time and attention to him. JJ had also lost his father. And when JJ lost his father, he became even that much more difficult to care for. No longer a second parent to help. Not only that, JJ also was entitled to Social Security benefits. The defendant didn't want to have to take care of JJ anymore. She wanted the money. JJ's gone. Tamara Douglas Daybell, known by friends and family as Tammy, a 49-year-old mother of 5, a grandmother, a computer whiz by all accounts. She was married to Chad Daybell. The defendant wanted Chad all to herself. Chad was the beneficiary of a life insurance policy for Tammy. Lori wanted those things. Tammy's gone. Tylee was last seen on September 8th of 2019. She had just relocated with her mother to Rexburg, Idaho on or about September 1st of 2019. And 7 days later is the last known sighting of Tylee. The next time Tylee is seen is on June 9th of 2020. She's found buried in a shallow grave on Chad Daybell's property. And when I say she's found, what I mean is what was left of Tylee was found. Charred remains. That's what was left of Tylee. You will hear it described as a mass of bone and tissue. That's what was left of this beautiful young woman, the defendant's daughter. You will also hear how Tylee's DNA was recovered on a pickaxe and shovel located in a shed on defendant Daybell's property. JJ was last seen on September 22nd of 2019 at the defendant's apartment in Rexburg, Idaho. Last time JJ was seen, he was with his uncle, Alex Cox, the defendant's brother. You'll hear from a witness that he saw Alex Cox carrying JJ. JJ's head on his shoulder appeared to be a peaceful scene. appeared JJ was sleeping at that time. JJ was not seen again until June 9th of 2020, when he was also found in a shallow grave on the defendant's property. JJ was found wrapped in garbage bags with duct tape around him. He had duct tape around his head. He had duct tape around his arms, taping them into a position like this. That's how the defendant's little boy was found. You will hear what a difficult scene that was to process. Law enforcement had been searching for these children since November of 2019, and even the most veteran law enforcement officers you'll hear from were disturbed by the scene. Some may have still been holding out hope against all odds that we'd find these children alive, but this wasn't what they expected to find. Tammy was last seen alive on the night of October 18th of 2019. Her son left to work. She was home alone with Chad Daybell on that night. On the morning of October 19th, just before 6 a.m., a 911 call is placed. Tammy's dead. She's cold and she's stiff. What we know is by the time law enforcement showed up, Chad Daybell had moved her body. Chad Daybell gives a description that Tammy wasn't feeling well, she'd been sick. Very few other witnesses report any concerns about Tammy's health. And mind you, at the time law enforcement show up at Tammy's death, when it's been reported, it's unknown at that time about JJ and Tylee missing. It's unknown that Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell are in any kind of a relationship. So nothing about Tammy's death is initially deemed to be suspicious. You will hear that the defendant was in Hawaii at the time Tammy died. And you will also hear that less than 3 weeks later, 17 days to be exact, the defendant and Chad Daybell were back in Hawaii. They were getting married on a sunny beach in Hawaii, dancing and celebrating their life together, while Tylee and JJ were cold in the ground in shallow graves, and while Tammy had just barely been laid to rest in the Springville, Utah cemetery, her hometown. The missing children, the sudden death of Tammy, the quick marriage of Chad and the defendant left so many questions for those still grieving the loss of Tammy and those still wondering 24/7 about the whereabouts and safety of the children. You will also hear how the defendant had switched Tylee's money from Tylee's JP Morgan Chase account to go into the defendant's BBVA account on or about August 16th of 2019. Tylee went missing on September 8th of 2019. You will also hear how she had begun receiving benefits on JJ's behalf approximately a month before he was last seen. And you will hear how she continued to collect those benefits and that money to fund her lifestyle. You are going to hear a lot of different dates and events that occurred on those dates, phone calls that were placed on those dates, messages that were sent, financial transactions that occurred. The reason you're going to hear about so many dates and so many events is because I've talked about dates in 2019 and 2020. This case actually starts in October of 2018. In October of 2018, the defendant met Chad Daybell for the first time. You'll hear that she had read his books. She was a fan of his. But she traveled to a Preparing the People conference in St. George, Utah. She traveled there with her friends, Melanie Gibb and Sulema Pastenis. These are two women that you will hear more about, and you will hear from them during this trial. When she traveled there with them, she met Chad for the first time. You'll hear it described that there appeared to be some kind of an instant connection. The two of them talked a lot. The defendant was flirty. But what you will also hear is that during this first meeting, the defendant and Chad decide that they share purported religious beliefs, and that they share beliefs that the two of them had been married before in a prior probation. You will hear it talked about multi-creations or a prior probation or a prior life. But regardless of the term used, what they began to tell others is that they were essentially meant to be together. They'd been married in prior lives, prior probations. Not only that, but they both said that they had been prior figures from or persons from the Bible or other religious references. This will include that they designated themselves as James and Elena. And you will hear that they pursued this line of thought and they pursued these teachings to others to the extent that Chad Daybell wrote a story, the James and Elena story for Lori, for the defendant. And you will hear through testimony how that story mirrored some true life events that were going on between the defendant and Chad Daybell. And at the time they met, it's important to remember they were both married to other people. Their spouses were both alive and well when they first met. But again, remember, the defendant will remove any obstacle in her way to get what she wants. And she wanted Chad Daybell. She had decided that. Soon after that first meeting in October of 2018, you will hear how the defendants began communicating regularly. Their relationship moved quickly. You will hear how Chad traveled to Arizona that next month in November of 2018. He traveled for a conference, but the defendant also held a gathering at her house, and Chad Daybell was present. You will hear how shortly after, the defendant, with the help of Chad Daybell, began telling people and purporting religious beliefs and teaching people about a rating system of light and dark. The defendant told others that with the help of Chad, she could rate people as light or dark. And pretty soon this theory evolved and these teachings evolved. And they started to say, well, if somebody's dark, an evil spirit or an evil entity can come in and they can push the real person out and take over the body. And the defendant and Chad Daybell talked about how you would get rid of these evil spirits. So the first thing they did was the defendant would lead castings. And you'll hear the castings described a little different by different witnesses, but with the idea being that there was prayer and energy work. They wouldn't have to be near the person that they were casting on, but they would get together and pray or do energy work to get rid of this evil spirit. You will also hear that these castings, time and time again, didn't work. But you'll hear that these teachings evolved. And they evolved to, well, a person could be so dark or a spirit could be so evil that the person actually becomes a zombie. You can't cast a zombie out. But a common theme was the body had to be destroyed. The defendant and Chad used their self-proclaimed religious beliefs and teachings to justify their actions to others. Their actions from an affair to murder. This was especially true with regards to the defendant's brother, Alex Cox. You will hear how Alex and the defendant had an extremely close relationship. Alex would do anything for Lori. And you'll hear how when Alex would do anything for Lori, when she uprooted her life in Arizona on or about September 1st of 2019 and moved up to Idaho and moved to Rexburg to be closer to Chad, that Alex quit his job and moved up to Rexburg with her. If Chad and Lori asked it, Alex did it. You will also hear how Alex Cox was taught by both the defendant and Chad Daybell that his purpose in this probation or this life or this creation, whichever term they use, was to protect Lori. He was a warrior, and he was here to protect Lori. When the defendant would talk about people being light and dark, she talked about her own daughter, Tylee, being dark. She told people this, and there's messages that she sent regarding this. But what you won't hear is anything about the defendant doing anything when Tylee went missing. There were no known actions taken by the defendant. No report to law enforcement, no missing person posters, no inquiries. Similarly with JJ, little 7-year-old boy. The defendant said he was dark. He was possessed. She told people this. There's messages about it. But again, what you won't hear is that when JJ went missing, that the defendant did anything. There are no known actions by the defendant to find JJ. No report to law enforcement, no missing person posters, no inquiries. You will hear how she described JJ's behaviors to others in an attempt to get them to agree that he must not be JJ anymore, that an evil spirit must have taken over his body. And you will hear how she was very convincing. You'll hear from witnesses how they believed what Lori told them. She was likable, energetic, and they believed her. They wanted to believe her. They wanted to follow Lori. They wanted what she was saying to be true. You will also hear how she told a friend of hers named April Raymond, who's another woman that you will hear from, that when she got divorced, that JJ would need to go live with Charles, his father, and that Charles would have to figure out what to do with him. And part of why she talked about this was that the defendant was also telling people that she was here on a mission. She was here on a religious mission to gather the 144,000. So she needed to spend her time and energy there. So JJ could go live with Charles because she had other things to do. She had more important things to do than care for her child. She expressed to people that what she did here on earth no longer counted for her. You'll hear how she'd hit her hand. Doesn't count for me. Doesn't count for me. She explained this to others by telling them that she was a translated being, and you'll hear more about that and what they taught with regards to that. But she convinced others that they were also in the translation process. Again, she's very convincing. People wanted to believe her. People trusted her. But what it really was she and Chad using their proposed religious beliefs and teaching to manipulate those around them into not questioning their actions and what they were doing. Their actions did not always comport with their teachings, and so you'll hear how those teachings evolved. They changed over time to justify or to support the actions of the defendant and Chad Daybell. You will hear how the defendant told others, because she was translated, she didn't have to repent. Again, doesn't count for me. You'll also hear how when she and Alex first moved here, Alex was setting the Wi-Fi password. He tells Lori in a message, "I set the password. Too many kids." Lori's short response, "Funny." That's before the kids went missing when they moved here. In the month or so after her children were last seen, what you will hear is the defendant went on several trips. She went on a trip to Arizona, and that trip was around October 9th of 2019. And that's a date that you will hear about. The defendant went to Arizona to visit her niece, Melanie Boudreaux, also known as Melanie Pulowski, another individual that you will hear more about and you will hear from during this trial. While she was down visiting her niece, Zulema Pastenis came over. And Lori led a casting on Tammy. Meanwhile, back in Idaho, what you will hear is on October 9th of 2019, that same day, Tammy came home from work. parked her car, went to get things out of the back, and came face to face with a masked man holding a gun and pointing at her. You will hear how Tammy heard a couple pops and the gunman ran off. What you will also hear is that later a phone call was overheard between Lori and an unknown individual. Lori was mad. On October 9th of 2019, she was mad, and she made a statement along the lines of, "He can't do anything right." What we also know is that there were some phone calls that night between she and at least Chad Daybell. Not long after that trip to Arizona, you will hear how Lori then traveled to Missouri with her niece Melanie. And while in Missouri, they visited some sites, and then they met up with an individual named Audrey Bartario, another woman that you will hear more about and you will hear from during this trial. And while they were there in Missouri, Lori led another casting on Tammy. By this time, you'll hear that the defendant and Chad had determined Tammy was dark. Tammy was possessed. She was possessed by an evil spirit named Viola. Shortly after the trip to Missouri, you will hear how how Lori then traveled to Hawaii. She traveled to Hawaii again with her niece Melanie, and Audrey joined them while they were there. And Lori was actually in Hawaii at the time of Tammy's death on or about October 19th of 2019. What you won't hear with any of these trips that the defendant went on, you won't hear about JJ or Tylee because they weren't with her. They weren't with her when she went to Arizona. They weren't with her when she went to Missouri, and they were not with her when she went to Hawaii. But what you will hear about is how the defendant was still spending their money. She was also sending her other son, Colby, money using Tylee's phone. So Tylee's phone was with her, but Tylee wasn't. You will hear how when she was in Hawaii, she was in constant or consistent contact with Chad. You'll hear how just after Tammy died, she hurried back to Idaho. And just after returning to Idaho, you will hear how the defendant began to insert herself into Chad Daybell's life. It was as if Tammy never existed. The defendant met his kids, came to his house, and Chad started to introduce her to some of his friends. And you will hear how Chad introduced her to some of his neighbors a little over a week after Tammy's passing. And you'll hear from those neighbors, those friends of Chad's. And you will hear how when they were introduced to Lori for the first time, she and Chad couldn't keep their hands off each other. Tammy hasn't been dead that long. They talk about plans to get married. But maybe most interestingly, Chad Daybell makes a statement when Lori's asked about kids, that she had a young daughter that had recently died. Lori says nothing about JJ. No mention of a young son. No correcting Chad on the whereabouts or if her daughter was alive or not. Just some indication about, well, I've got some stepkids. Not long after that meeting, the defendant was in Hawaii on a beach marrying Chad Daybell. They got married in Hawaii on November 5th of 2019. You will hear how the defendant had actually begun looking for malachite wedding rings as early as May of 2019. You will hear how the malachite stone was important to them. What you will also hear is on their wedding day, they exchanged malachite rings. And in May of 2019, when the defendant was looking for those rings, both of their spouses were alive and well. You will hear also how Chad Daybell began checking into adding the defendant to his to his health insurance policy. And when he went to fill out that application, you will hear how he said, no minor children. There's no minors that need to be added to this policy, just the defendant. You'll hear how similarly he was looking for a rental property for them in Hawaii. And on that application, same thing, no minor children. Just Chad and Lori, just Chad and the defendant, just the way they wanted it. On November 26th of 2019, law enforcement showed up at the apartments located at 565 Pioneer Road in Rexburg, Idaho. They were looking for JJ. It was still unknown that Tylee was missing at this point. Chad Daybell was there with Alex Cox, and law enforcement made contact with them. Finally, later that same day, they were able to contact the defendant regarding the whereabouts of JJ. The defendant was less than forthcoming with law enforcement at that time. She told law enforcement that JJ was with her friend Melanie Gibb in Arizona. The problem with this? She'd told Melanie JJ was with Kay Woodcock, his grandmother. Problem with that? Kay Woodcock is the one that had reported JJ missing to law enforcement. So where was JJ? And where was Tylee, for that matter? The defendant did not cooperate in locating them. Instead, when law enforcement returned, she'd cleared out her apartment and moved to Hawaii with Chad, her new husband. While Chad and Lori were starting their new life together in Hawaii, law enforcement had begun a massive search for JJ and Tylee. It became a nationwide search for those children. As they were searching for the children and beginning their investigation, they talked to Melanie Gibb, because Lori had said that JJ was with Melanie. Melanie had been asked to not talk to law enforcement by Chad. She'd been asked to tell law enforcement JJ was with her by Lori, even so far as Lori saying, snap a picture of some kids. Send it to law enforcement, basically. Melanie Gibb wasn't sure what to do, but eventually she came forward to law enforcement and said, JJ was never with me. Never had him. Don't know where he is. Because of everything that had gone on, Melanie Gibb, on December 8th of 2019, decides to place a phone call to Chad and the defendant. She wants to know, where's JJ? And why did you ask me to tell law enforcement he was with me? What's going on? She recorded that conversation. And what we know from that conversation and what you will hear is the defendant refused to disclose where JJ was, but claimed he was happy. Claimed and ultimately ended up saying she knew exactly where JJ was. I remind you, JJ was last seen on September 22nd of 2019. This is December 8th of 2019. And I'll remind you how JJ was found. And yet the defendant's statement to Melanie Gibb was, I know exactly where he is. When confronted about Tammy's death, the defendant indicated they did what they had to do. Now remember, Chad and Lori had determined Tammy was dark. And if someone's dark and castings don't work, the body has to be destroyed. They did what they had to do. The defendant and Chad did what they had to do to remove any and every obstacle that was in their way of getting exactly what they wanted. On December 11th of 2019, Tammy was removed from her resting place to be examined. And it was determined by the Office of the Utah Medical Examiner that Tammy died at the hands of another and that the cause of her death was asphyxiation. You will hear how around the time of Tammy's exhumation, Alex Cox made a statement along the lines of, I hope I'm not their fall guy. What exactly Alex meant by this or what he knew, we may never know, because Alex Cox died the next day on December 12th of 2019. What we do know, though, is there were communications between Alex Cox, the defendant, and Chad Daybell. We know in those conversations there was discussions of people being light and dark, and we know the location of Alex's phone and Chad's phone on certain dates and times. We know that on October 9th of 2019, the day Tammy was confronted by a masked gunman, that Alex Cox's phone had been in the area earlier in the day, driving by where the Daybell residence is located. The only person Alex Cox knew in the Salem area was Chad Daybell. We know that on September 9th of 2019, the morning after the last day Tylee is seen, we know Alex Cox's phone is in Chad Daybell's backyard, on his property, close to where Tylee's remains are found. We also know around that same time, Chad Daybell's phone is there on his property, close to where Tylee's body is found. We also know from other witnesses that Alex Cox would do whatever the defendant and Chad asked him to do. He was loyal to them to a fault. You have already heard from the state that we have the burden in this case, but I want to reiterate that. We as the state have the burden to prove each and every element beyond a reasonable doubt. You have heard that term, and you will hear it again, reasonable doubt. The court is the judge of the law, and the judge will give you the definition of the law. And the judge will specifically provide a definition of reasonable doubt, and you follow his definition. But I will say reasonable doubt is commonly defined as a doubt that would cause a reasonable person to hesitate to act. And I would emphasize reasonable. The defendant is charged with multiple crimes, and you just heard him in the indictment. Conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and grand theft in relation to the death of Tylee Ryan, her daughter. First-degree murder in relation to the death of Tylee Ryan, her daughter. Conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and grand theft in relation to J.J. Vallow, her son. First-degree murder in relation to J.J. Vallow, her son. Conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in relation to Tammy Daybell. And grand theft for the taking of the Social Security monies. Again, the judge will advise you on the law, but keep in mind that when we talk about the term conspiracy, it is two or more persons combining or conspiring, so essentially a meeting of the minds to commit some crime. And then one of those actors, just one, has to do an overt act in furtherance of that conspiracy. Only one person has to do it, and there only has to be one overt act. What that means is the defendant doesn't have to be the one that physically ended anyone's life for her to be guilty of conspiracy. If you determine that there was a meeting of the minds and one actor did one overt act in furtherance of that. Similarly, in the state of Idaho, Idaho law allows for someone to be charged as a principal. When someone is charged as a principal to a crime, it can include them directly committing the act, aiding and abetting in its commission, or it can include them having advised and encouraged its commission, or commanding or coercing another to commit the crime. So similarly, when you're hearing about the first-degree murder, the defendant did not have to physically end someone's life for her to be guilty. First-degree murder is deliberate, willful, and premeditated actions causing someone to die. Remind you, and circling back, when Tylee was found, as we talked about, all that was found was charred remains. Tylee's hands are gone. When JJ was found, his hands were bound and duct taped in front of his body. When Tammy was found, those hands, she was described as a computer whiz, never going to do anything on a computer again. And the defendant and Chad Daybell getting married on a beach in Hawaii, starting their life together, all obstacles gone. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I thank you for being here today and your willingness to serve on the jury. We recognize that you do have a task here, and you are the judge of facts, and I would let you know that that is the most important job in this courtroom. This is set to be a long trial, and you're going to sit through a lot of evidence and a lot of testimony. What we ask you to do is be attentive to the testimony and evidence presented. Apply your common sense and reasonableness in weighing the evidence. Give every piece of evidence and testimony the weight you think it is due. Hold us to our burden, and we feel that if you apply your common sense, I'm confident that you will return a verdict of guilty in this case. Thank you.
All right, I think that that kind of gave you a flavor as far as the opening arguments, the opening statements. I'm going to post for you to listen to the defense because it's about another 20 minutes. And I know many of you were saying, that's so long. Why did you play the whole thing? I thought it would be better for you to hear it rather than have me talk about it. I do want to say right there at the end when Lindsay was talking about hands, how Tylee's hands were gone, they showed the charred remains. How JJ's, the condition of his hands, they showed his hands duct taped. And when Tammy's hands, they showed her arm and hands, her autopsy photo. And then Chad and Lori were in Hawaii. They showed their wedding ring photo. So powerful visual there for the jurors to hear. Now, Jim Archibald did take the stand. He introduced himself. He admitted that these cases are difficult. And he said that, he's done 27 murder cases over the past 32 years. He was assigned to this case. 99% of the cases end in a resolution, a plea agreement. 1% go to trial. He talked about Lori's upbringing, her childhood. He talked about how Lori was a responsible mother and how the jurors need to be 100% certain, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Lori, his clients, committed the crimes that she's accused of. Otherwise, they cannot convict her. He spoke for about 20 minutes. Again, I'm not going to play the whole thing for you just because it is that was kind of lengthy, and I apologize for those of you that were like, why are you playing this whole thing? Well, that's why. I wanted to play it all for you because I wanted you to hear how it went. So that's what we have right now. Now, before I get to your questions, I know there are a lot of questions here. And if you're just tuning in on YouTube, it looks like the beginning part didn't quite go live. So I'll post that later. You can watch the introduction from tonight's show. But what I want to talk about today, we always want to remember the victim as to why we are here, and then give you a preview as far as what is happening tomorrow with court. Because as I mentioned, we had opening statements. Kay then took the stand, Kay Woodcock, and then Brandon Boudreaux took the stand and spoke for probably about an hour and a half each before they wrapped up for the day. And here's the story that was sent to me about JJ. A little background on this picture. The prosecution showed this picture to Kay and asked her today to identify JJ, and she started to cry. She said this is one of her favorite pictures of JJ. He was in Larry's truck. He was visiting them in Louisiana. And she loves this picture. And she said, that's my grandson. That's JJ. And somebody who knows JJ sent me this. JJ was a ray of light in the world with big dreams, bigger dance moves, and an incredible personality. It was always a good day when JJ was around, and his laugh was nothing short of infectious. JJ was loved by all who had the incredible opportunity to be part of his devastatingly short life, and he changed all of our lives for the better. We grieve this unbearable loss every day and continue to pray that justice will be served for JJ and Tylee. While some may not publicly be speaking out, we are grieving every day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't miss JJ, his smile, his spirit, his excitement for life, his dancing, and his larger-than-life personality. He was truly more than we deserve in this world, and he will be forever missed. JJ and Tylee, we love you fiercely and will continue to keep your memory alive. So tonight, we honor JJ, we remember him, Tylee, Tammy, and Charles, and we will have more stories to share about them in the coming days. Now, tomorrow, we know the first witness is going to be Ray Hermosillo with the Rexburg Police Department. He will probably be on the stand for a while. He kind of was the lead on this. Him and Ron Ball kind of led this thing. They got called to the house when JJ and Tylee were reported missing. They showed up, and it'll be interesting to hear his testimony. I would not be surprised if he's on the stand all day tomorrow, or at least most of tomorrow. And that's what we'll have tomorrow. All right, now it is time for your questions. So send over your questions if you have some. I appreciate you all watching, and just want to give you an update here. If you want to follow me, I posted probably 500 updates today. That's an exaggeration, but I posted a lot, about every minute from inside the courtroom. I tweeted it and then I posted it to East Idaho News. You can go to our page and you can, get the updates as I'm inside the courtroom. And again, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube, East Idaho News, you can go there and you can, you'll get a bell. If you hit the bell, you'll get an alert every time we post testimony video. And I'm going to do that right when I finish up here tonight. I'm going to go and upload all the audio from today, and you can listen at your heart's content. All right, first question. Aaron, can we get a new judge for Chad's trial? I don't know. Right now, Judge Boyce is the judge assigned to the trial, the district judge. I guess he could always recuse himself, or somebody could try to have him kicked off the case. I don't think that will happen, though, because he's been in it all along. I will say, if this is about cameras in the courtroom, we're going to try to get cameras in Chad's trial. You can quote me on that. I think by then we will have heard a lot of the evidence, a lot of the testimony, and so we'll try to get cameras in there so that you all can watch. Carolyn, good question. Did Lori react to any of the witness testimony? I will say the part that I will remember most about today with Lori is when Brandon was on the stand and said that JJ was obsessed with two things. One was Brandon's son. He loved to play with his son. And two was traveling, luggage. JJ loved luggage. He loved to travel. And when Brandon said that, Lori got a big grin on her face and looked over to her attorney and said something. It was almost as if it was one of those mom moments, like, yeah, that's my son. That was my interpretation of it. So that was an interesting moment. She hasn't showed, as far as no other emotion that I can tell, as far as tears or anything, but she's listened. She listened intently. She took notes. When we all go to break, when there's the recess in the morning, her attorneys go out and maybe go to the restroom or get a drink or something, as do most people. She stays there at her table. She was wearing a nice sort of suit top today, I guess, with longer sleeves. She obviously has someone getting her a wardrobe, I should say, because she was dressed nice and her hair was curled and she had on black-rimmed glasses. Is Colby going to attend? I have not heard any plans of Colby planning on coming. He was not there today, and I don't know if he'll be here or not. Will Nancy Grace be coming to court? Good question, Pam. I know that Nancy had mentioned to me in the past that she wanted to come. I have not heard her plans on if she's coming, but I wouldn't be surprised if she shows up in the next few weeks. How long will this trial be? Tammy, at least another month. That was according to Lori's attorney today when we tracked him down on the street. Probably another month. So I'm thinking it'll wrap up mid-May. Pauline, did Melanie Boudreaux get immunity? I don't know about any sort of official arrangement with her. I know that Melanie was not there today, but they did say she will testify in this trial. So she's testifying for the prosecution in the trial, meaning something may have been worked out, or they've subpoenaed her to come, and she will come. She has not been charged with anything, but her fingerprints, at least thus far, appear to be close, because obviously she moved up to Rexburg to be with Lori and Alex. Whatever happened to Melanie, the friend of Lori? Melanie Gibb, I'm assuming you mean Jim. Melanie will be another witness. She will be coming up here. She will be testifying. She played a key role in a lot of this. As you may recall, I interviewed her back in May of 2020, back before we knew a lot of this. And actually, Melanie informed us of a lot of stuff. So she will be a witness. Is Lori still wearing her hairband wedding ring? No, I haven't seen that, Becky. Although I haven't gotten a close look at her hands, I do know the past few hearings she's been in St. Anthony, she wasn't wearing that ring. How did Lori handle seeing the photos of the kids today? Good question, Jess. She didn't have much of a reaction. I will say that the photo of Tammy remained on the screen for a long time, her autopsy photo. That was up for the longest. Did Lori look at the photos? I imagine she did. However, the way the courtroom was set up, I'm going to bounce over to this. The screen was above, or see the witness area? That's where the screen was. So she didn't have a direct shot. Now, she may have had a monitor on their table. I'm not sure, though. I'll have to get a better look tomorrow. I was seated clear over by the jury. Oh, and before I go any further, the typing noise you heard in that video. I don't know who typed. That was not me typing. Well, it could have been me typing, I should say. But I will say that there was about 10 reporters seated in a group. And when the opening arguments were happening, we were frantically typing. And it was like a type class. You know, I don't know. I'm old because I had 8th grade type class. Did any of you have type class where you type A, S, 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 S? And we were all typing. That we went to break and we came back, and the jurors actually said something that our typing was too loud. It was a distraction. So we had to quietly type. So that typing may have been from all of us, or it may have been the court reporter or the court recorder recording the thing. So that's what that typing noise was. Has anyone heard if Chad has access to tweets or other resources to follow the trial live like we are? I have not heard that. I would strongly doubt that, but his attorney can fill him in if he wants. Is Lori looking at all sad? Not that I've seen. She has not displayed any sign of sadness. When will the children be released for services? I believe that's happening at the end of the trial, and I don't know if that means Lori's trial or Chad's trial, but that's when they'll be able to do that. Did Lori look at the pictures of the children? What reaction did you notice? Again, I didn't notice much of a reaction. It's my understanding that part of Lori's defense team was specifically a death penalty lawyer. If the death penalty has been taken off the table, why is the death penalty Lori still on here defending Lori? Good question, Amy. Well, she was assigned a public defender in the early stages. Well, first of all, she had another attorney, Mark Means, who was not death penalty qualified. So then she was assigned 2 death penalty attorneys. The death penalty was taken off the table like 3 weeks ago. I don't believe the court was going to have enough time to get her 2 brand new attorneys and get them up to speed. I think they just went ahead with it. And Jim Archibald and John Thomas also have other clients who aren't death penalty clients. They're just theft or murder or rape. I mean, they represent a vast variety of criminals. So it's not like they only do death penalty cases. But because they were already on this case, the judge was going to keep him there. And can you imagine if we had had another year of delays while they get 2 more attorneys and get them up to speed? Allegedly, Boyce and Lori's attorneys are good friend. I think that is a conflict of interest. I don't know anything about that. I do know that these attorneys and these judges see each other a lot, sometimes daily, because they're always working together. And it is what it is. We'll see. What do you do to prepare for the trial? Do you have any downtime? Oh, that was asked of me. What do I do? I try to sleep at night. I get up around 5:45, 6 o'clock, because I have to somehow exercise and work out and not pay attention to any of this. So this morning I listened to a podcast. The podcast is the coldest case in Laramie. I don't know if you've heard of that one. It's a true crime one. I swear I wasn't into true crime before this. And it's interesting. So I worked out, and then I have breakfast. I go over to the courthouse around 7:30, 7:15-ish. We hand around. We can go up at 8 o'clock. And then I come right after the hearing trial ends. I come home and I prepare for this to talk to you all. And then after this, I'll post video, and then I'll try to find something to watch. Do you have any good suggestions on what to watch on Showtime? My hotel has Showtime, and I don't have Showtime at home. So if you have a good series for the next few weeks. I also read, but honestly, my brain goes all the time, so I'm never really unplugged. Thank you for asking, though. Do you talk much to the other media, or do you guys stick to yourselves? No. We talk. We talk with all the media. Everyone's been good. I know a lot of these reporters. I sit by Justin Lum every day. We chat. We compare notes. If I miss something, I ask him. If he misses something, he asks me. So everybody's good. Multiple agencies. Just today, People Magazine said, "Can I take you to dinner? Can I buy you a drink?" I don't drink. I do eat dinner. Oh, actually, funny, that's the next question. Can we send you lunch or buy you a beer to thank you for your hard work? Well, thank you, Gary. That's very kind of you. No, I mean, I'm not, that's kind of you. Thank you for your thoughts. You know who needs it more? My family back at home. Erica is holding down the fort with kids. We found out today that Emmy has strep throat. So she got pulled home from school. I might be getting personal here, but thank you for that kind offer. But I'm good. Clickety clack in the background was the typing. Did Alex really die of natural causes? Amber says. Well, that is what they say. That's what the medical examiner says. That's what we know. So haven't heard otherwise. And that I've been told by many investigators that may be the one true coincidence in all of this. But I don't know. Then it can maybe not. We may never know. Why on earth did it sound like a dog barked? Certainly someone wasn't allowed to bring a dog to court. I can assure you there were no dogs in that courtroom. There might have been a squeak from the chairs. Couple more. Will Lori stand trial in Arizona for Charles's murder? Good question, Robin. She is facing a conspiracy to commit murder charge in Arizona. Arizona authorities have said when Idaho is finished with her, they will pursue those charges. I would not be surprised. This is just me speculating, which I hate to do. But if she's found guilty here and given a life sentence with no parole, sometimes other states will just say, okay, we submit to the Idaho's charge. That might not happen. They could take her back there and she could do that. I once covered a serial killer, though, who murdered people in multiple states. And then Virginia sentenced him to like 5 life sentences. And all the other states said, we're going to save money. We're going to defer to that sentence. We'll let you keep him, Virginia. So that might happen. But I have no idea. Is the FBI part of this trial? Oh, yes, Elizabeth. The FBI has been part of this since early on. I don't want to say day one, but early on. Great questions. I thank you all for joining me tonight. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to talk about Ray Hermosillo, Detective Hermosillo's testimony, and whatever else happens in court. And if you have any other questions, I would appreciate that. You sending them through. I can't thank you all enough for watching. I hope that this is useful to you, or at least interesting, and that you are following along. I mean, it helps me keep a job, honestly, and I know there's so many interested in this case. So again, I'm going to go take care of that audio file. We'll post the testimony of Brandon and Kay. I've just put Kay up on YouTube. If you go over to our YouTube channel, you can listen to Kay Woodcock's testimony. We'll get Brandon up, and we'll get all of the opening statements up, and you can listen to it. Thank you again for watching. Have a great night, and we will see you back here tomorrow, 7:30 Mountain Time, Courtroom Insider. Have a good night.